Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sunday night. I hope you're doing great. As I'm working through these 2025 astrology videos, predictions for each of the signs, sun and rising sign, I'm noticing that I'm talking quite a bit about one of the asteroids that is not really moving or doing anything, but it's a key to learning a lot about yourself. And it's going to help you understand the bigger picture of your astrological life. Okay. And this is Chiron, the wounded healer. So many of you on my channel are healers and mystics and guides and shamans. And a lot of you are in a life that is pre 2025. And 2025 is going to shake everything up. It is going to ask a lot of you to move into being your healer. The way to get there is to work with your Chiron. So I wanted to share this class with you. This is one of my most popular classes, and this is sort of a holiday gift to everybody who hasn't seen it yet. And I just want to offer this to you as a way of looking at your own wounds and doing the healing of your own wounds so that you can step into your mission and purpose as a healer, a mystic, a shaman. And I know a lot of you are in the process of doing that. So without further ado, here you go. So we are going to be talking about past life karmic lessons tonight. We're going to be talking about biggest life lessons. We're going to be talking about Chiron tonight. And Chiron is pretty close to the North Node, is one of my favorite things to talk about, because I just feel like Chiron and North Node have such a huge impact when you figure it out, or even when you're starting to get curious about it. So I'm glad you guys are here. And so a couple of ground rules. Part of working with your North Node, working with your Chiron, understanding it for yourself, is to work with the information. So I am definitely happy to answer question. Oh, I'm glad you like the meditation. I am glad to be answering questions for you, but here's what I'm not going to answer. So let's just have some ground rules. So don't put all of your placements, okay, in the Q&A. Q&A is where all of your questions should go. But don't put all your placements in. We're working with Chiron tonight. I really want you to focus just on your Chiron. If you have questions about aspects with other planets, that's fair. If you're curious about how this might work with, some of your personal planets, or, sun, moon, rising, or Venus, fair enough. But let's try, this is not a private reading. This is just like, let's get immersed in Chiron. Okay. So that's what I'd like you to focus on when you have questions, or if you have questions. Put them all in the Q&A, not in the chat. The chat is really just for chat, like what you're doing right now. And, put them all in the chat, in the Q&A. Don't screw everybody up, Mary Jo. Put them in the Q&A, and I will do my best to answer all of them. Generally, this class will I'll take about an hour to go through this, maybe a little bit more. And then I'll answer questions, and we are going to give precedence to questions that are specific. Okay. So I want you to have worked with this information enough so that your question outlines kind of like, okay, this is how I'm sort of seeing this, but it has an aspect to my Jupiter or something like that. Okay. So do me a favor and be kind of focused tonight. All right. Be kind of focused. So I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, Jessica, but put your questions in the Q&A. We'll get to them in a second when I finish the material. And generally, we don't go anywhere past 7:45 or 8 o'clock. So that's what I'm shooting for. And all right, everybody's good. Awesome. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here, share. And I'm going to have this go full screen, full screen, enter full screen. Yay. Okay. I'm not too bad at this. Colleen will be pleased that I'm getting better at this. Okay. So I call this class Activating Your Superpower, because your Chiron placement is where you're wounded, but it's also the most the strongest medicine once you fix yourself or heal yourself or work with it yourself. It is medicine that you're here to bring to the world. Okay. And that's why I kind of like these two things, the North Node and Chiron, are kind of special to me, kind of important to me. And because that's what my mission is about, is helping people understand and remember who they are. All right. So tonight we're going to cover what is Chiron. What does Chiron rule in my life? We'll talk about Chiron in the houses and Chiron in the signs. And so if some of you have taken my tarot class, I'm going to kind of work with this. I'm going to ask you to work with this kind of like this. So if you have a keyword for the house, right? The houses represent parts of your life that are most affected by whatever planets or placements are in there. And the sign is the energy. Okay, so you basically use a keyword for the house and a keyword for the sign, and that's how you can kind of start to get your head around it. All right. We'll be talking about Chiron with transits and aspects. We'll be talking about progressed Chiron. Someone sent me a question. Was it tonight? I don't even know, Jessica. I was just answering all those North Node questions, but they were talking about progressed Chiron. And progressed Chiron, if you're approaching 50, like 49, 50, somewhere in there, then you're having a Chiron return. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. And really tonight, I want to get you started down the road. We're not going to accomplish this in 2 hours. Some of you may, some of you may not, but to work with your own wounded healer and activate this superpower, because it really is a superpower once you figure this out. Okay. So it looks like this in the chart, the little K, it looks like a key, right? It looks like that. And, I'll paraphrase the story of Chiron. Chiron is the son of Kronos and a sea nymph, okay? And Kronos, this craggy old broken down crock of a old man. Kronos is the god of time, right? So he's, forever and ever an old man. And he falls in love with this sea nymph and he has his way with her and she's pregnant and she is disgusted by him. And she has Chiron. That's her child. And her child is half man, half beast or something like that. And it just disgusts her. So she runs away and she abandons this child. She abandons Chiron. And so Chiron is really the story of abandonment in childhood. It can be the story of abandonment in past life. Okay. And it shows up in your life in this Chiron placement and maybe in other parts of your life. So you might be able to easily track it back to an experience you had in childhood, or you may be like, that doesn't really track. And that likely is a past life situation. Okay. Past life sitch. So just so you know that. Later on in Chiron's life, he just can't get out of his own way. Okay. So later on in Chiron's life, he is wounded by Hercules' arrow. It becomes an everlasting wound because they're immortal. So if you have an everlasting wound and you never die, that's a problem. Okay. So it is up to him to take care of it. It's up to him to work with it. And he tried, a little bit like Groundhog Day. He tried, when it's part of that movie when Bill Murray tries to kill himself every day. It's kind of like that. He tried to do that, but that's not the way out. The way out is not to destroy. The way out is to gain awareness and work with it and embrace it. Embrace all of these things as our wounds, but also our greatest strengths. By working with this, you can step into the world a little bit more strongly. People will resonate with a wound you have healed. If you have overcome something in your life, if you have done the work of healing something, this is also something then you can teach to other people. You can also show them. So becoming conscious about your own Chiron really can show you about at least one of the things you're here to do in this life. And if you take this and your North Node and you work with those two, you're a long way down the road of knowing what this life's karma is all about. All right. So that's why I like these two topics. Here's mine, 5th house Chiron in Pisces. And I have worked with this quite a bit. 5th house is the house of children. It is, I am an adopted kid. So this Chiron made total sense to me about abandonment of children. It also has to do with creativity. It has to do with connecting to the divine. So we'll go through all the houses and everything, but I have worked with this for a long time and worked with the, whatever abandonment issues I might have. This is what it's, especially since it's not too far away from Saturn, but Saturn is not really aspecting it in that way. The aspects need to be tighter for it to really have power. That would be a conjunction if it were like 1 degree or 0 degrees, 1 degree, 2 degree. It's more like 4 degrees off. So it's a little of a weaker thing where Saturn is like, do it, take care of this. But Chiron is still getting a little bit of far distant waves of Saturn saying, I'll work with you. Okay, so that's how that might work. Okay, so Chiron is our primal wound. All right, it is a wound in childhood. It triggers past life pain. It triggers karmic lessons, and it shows you where your true power lies. It is your deepest sense of abandonment, inadequacy, and triggers come from this. So if you're like, okay, well, if it's past life, then how the hell do I know how it's impacting me? You need to look at what triggers you. And that can bring clues, not just about Chiron, but that can bring clues to any past life karma. Triggers are a huge issue, or not issue, huge kind of a flag saying, hey, this is past life shit. You need to get your act together. This is important. So that's what triggers are really about. So people can be triggered by any number of things. But this is why I recommend journaling. I recommend, paying attention to what comes up for you, because, you may get a puzzle piece when you're 14 and another puzzle piece when you're 25. By journaling, you're kind of putting it into your consciousness so you can start to piece these things together. All right. So shadow work is about understanding your dark side, the things you don't want other people to see, the things you kind of try to bury like a beach ball under the water, and it shows up at the worst times. Okay. Spiritual bypassing, doing real shadow work is about doing the stuff that's uncomfortable. All right. And spiritual bypassing is about, doing a lot of spiritual practices, which by itself is not that big a deal. It's lovely, but if it's not really getting you anywhere by, focusing on these issues, it's not really getting you there. It's something that's basically bypassing. You're making yourself feel better by, reading a whole bunch of tarot, or, I don't know, working through lessons that are kind of surfacey and not really big. These are big. These are uncomfortable. These can be embarrassing and all of that kind of stuff. So people tend to not want to do it. And that's why people have tower moments and later in life, because they're not wanting to look at the thing they're here to learn. We are spiritual beings in a physical body. We are here to do this work. We're not here necessarily just to, take part in the earthly life we have. We're here to have this earthly life in this earthly body in order to evolve, in order to ascend, in order to grow. And part of growing is really looking these things in the face. Okay. So the cool thing, the upside of this, it's not just like, oh God, it's ugly under there. It's like, this also points to special gifts. So you look at something that makes you uncomfortable about yourself, or that causes embarrassment, or that's deeply painful. And by looking at it and nurturing it like your internal little girl or little boy, what you're doing is you're essentially saying that you're okay, no matter what. And what happens with Chiron is it blossoms into a gift. And that's something, it will also drop a lot of karmic lessons in your life. And these are all things that are related to your growth. So by healing this, you have the potential of bringing that medicine to the world. So for example, if you're somebody who their Chiron is in the second house, and they're always having a hard time with money or hate money. I don't want to see money. Or it's like, I'm constantly after money. By healing this and figuring out why, it usually has to do with self-worth. It usually has to do with, what do I value? And am I actively valuing myself, or do I think I don't have value and that's why I'm not allowing money in my life? So by doing this, once you overcome this, you heal this, you have a really powerful thing that you can then bring to the rest of us. And we need it. We need it. Okay. So this is not just about you sitting in your room and figuring something out and going, oh, that's cool. And then your life continues on as normal. This is about a potential pathway to opening you up to your spiritual gifts. It's not just one thing, but this is surely a good way to start. And you start with the ugly. Start with the ugly. Why not? Because if you're starting at all the pretty and all of that stuff, then it's kind of superficial after a while. You really want to dig deep. So Chiron healing, these are deep woundings, past life karmas. It's important to take your time. Yes, get a mani-pedi. Okay, fine. But that's not really going to be the dirt of it. You got me? Stages of healing will take you through. When you're working with this, you'll know this, that you're doing it because you go through these stages of grief. You can go through denial and anger and bargaining and depression and acceptance. And if you read, I forget what the book is about grief. It's a very, very famous book. It's about the fact that you can go through anger multiple times. You know, if you don't get it all, it's like, you got to get the whole infection out. Otherwise, you can keep spinning in these things. Depression is kind of like anger turned inward. It's like, I'm terrible, I'm awful, right? And all these things, bargaining, like, please take this away from me. The more you can be like, you know what, I'm here for this, the better off you're going to be. All right. So shadow work is an introspective practice that recognizes your hidden wounds and sides of you that you may hide. And instead, it kind of brings them out, brings them to the surface, brings them more visible so that you can then embrace that. Warts and all. Warts and all. I'm not super happy, you know, whatever this is, like, I'm not super happy that I'm an extrovert. I'm not super, you know, whatever it is about yourself that you try to keep hidden, especially as it relates to your Chiron placement, the more you're like, yep, that's me, the more you're like flying your freak flag in a truly authentic way, right? Like a truly like, yes, this is me. These are the battle scars I have. Yes, I am this, but that's not going to define my life. It's something that helps sustain growth. It's something that helps me be stronger. Okay, because once you heal this and work with healing this, then you are ever stronger for it. It's like you're facing right into the ugly abyss and you're not afraid of it. And then you're like unstoppable. Okay, so let's go through the houses here. And I'm not going to read all of this. What I'm going to try to do, because I want to get to questions as soon as we can, because I know everybody has questions about their own placements. But I want to encourage you to think about these things in terms of your life. My answer is not nearly as good as your answer. All right. So, you know, your life experience, you know how this has shown up in your life or whatever. So I can give you my kind of like window on this, but the really strong, deep, meaningful answer comes from you. Okay. So the first house is connected with your sense of self, who you are. And the mantra, or I'm going to say, like, I made a little phrase for each of the houses. First house is about I am. Okay, I am. And it's here to help you over your Chiron placed in the first house is to help you overcome insecurities so you can stand alone and innovate. It's about leadership. I am worthy of pursuing my passion and purpose. I am worthy of all I desire. It's like standing fully in your body and being like, I am here. Okay. And so some things to consider about boundaries. Have you limited yourself? Do you think you don't deserve, right? A lot of these wounds are about self-love and about self-worth. So the first house is the wound of self. It can be physical. You know, you can not like your physical appearance. It can be something that you were shamed for as a child. This is also, a lot of people with this first house wound can feel like they don't deserve success and things along those lines. And do you know who you truly are, or have you rejected your true self in some way? All right, that's the question to kind of answer yourself. So the gift of healing this first house wound of self is a greater sense of identity, more authentic experience. A lot of people who have this placement. I have a good friend who is an absolutely amazing artist. He's a singer. He loves theater. But his family is like, go get a job. Like, what are you doing? And he's been that way his whole life. And so he's now in his 50s and he's like, I've hidden myself this whole time. I don't do what I really love doing because I think that I'm supposed to be working in the coal mines, which is practically what his job is. And he punishes himself because he doesn't think that himself, his true self, is worthy. So you can see that it is about I am in the first house. In the second house, it's the wound of loss. So the second house is about I possess. And it relates to the heart chakra and the root chakra. It's what you relate to as your value systems, your morals, your money. And this can be like you have very different morals or value system than your family. Okay. You could have been brought up in a very wealthy family and you think those fuckers are just totally not relevant in this world. Or the opposite, you can be somebody who comes from a family that is very tied to a particular religious background, and how they live their life is not you, right? You don't value what they do. And so your work here is to trust that you're safe. Okay. I am love. I give love. I'm open to love. I am worthy of all I desire. This is a place of problems manifesting and things like that, because you don't align inside. You think that what you value isn't worthy, or that you're not worthy of what you do value. Okay. So what you get from this is, when you work with this, is I am worthy of all I desire. And the gift is a sense of purpose, because true manifestation of value, of money or position or success or any of those things, the really cool stuff is when you can do all that and have a sense of purpose and meaningfulness in your work. Meaningfulness is alignment with what you value. So, this is also a placement where people overwork, or they tend to underwork. They just give up. Okay. The third house is the wound of words. And this is connected to your throat chakra. Some of you may find it very difficult to speak your truth. Okay. The third house is it can be issues with siblings or community, being an outcast in your town or in your school or something like that. You can have those problems, especially if you are speaking your truth and you're doing it in a way that is destroying community or friendships or your siblings or something like that. It has to do with bullying. Like, this is a bullying placement. Okay. And the third house is the little phrase I wrote is I express, and it's issues around speaking your truth. Communication is critical to your soul's evolution. So you need to learn to speak with authenticity and integrity and clarity, without there being like this angry, sort of like, I don't know, like an edge to it, because that's fear. Okay. So what happens is when you learn to speak, I always had a problem speaking. There's a particular person in my life that I'm thinking of right now, and having conversations with this person, it was a sibling, my brother. Having conversations with him, I felt very tongue-tied. I felt very hard to express myself authentically. Every time I would have a conversation with him, I'd go away going, God, why did I say that? That just doesn't, that's not even real. And it's because it's wrapped up in fear, especially, you know, if there was bullying or someone was very much older in a position of authority. All right. So this placement, when you learn to work with this, the gift is authenticity and integrity, because you're now not afraid to speak what you think, regardless of the recipient, but you're learning how to do it in such a way that they can hear it. It's not enough just to blast people. It's that, how can I connect with someone, right? How can I connect with someone, and how can I still be in my integrity and express my truth? Okay, that's the third house. The fourth house is the wound of family. And that fourth house, the little phrase I wrote is, I belong. Okay, so what you're doing in this life is you're working with your sacral chakra and your third eye are the places that are connected to this. This is a place of mother wounds. This is a place of a sense of security or feeling rejected. Was there unpredictability in your home growing up? What was the emotional climate growing up? And your healing mantra is, I'm the creator of my emotional reality, or I am connected to spirit and I trust my intuition. If it's unbalanced, it can be too much conditioning, right? From the, especially from mothers or from ancestors. Right? The fourth house is the house of ancestors also. And it's about creating your own sense of home. So this could be a placement where you make home wherever you go. You could be someone who creates home, you know, you have a lot of friends who you consider sisters, and you really do, like, it's a real thing. It's not just something you say, but you've focused on having home and a sense of security and really working with those mother wounds, because that is a big part of why you may never really feel at home anywhere. People with this placement might move around a lot. I got to find my home. I don't know where I belong, you know, and it's about belonging where you are, no matter where you are, belonging right here all the time. Okay, all the time. Yes, can certain places feel better than others? Sure, but it all radiates from inside you. So if you can get to the place where you feel at home anywhere, you got something. And the gift is a sense of place and security, no matter what's going on. Okay. The fifth house, I create. Okay, this is the wound of talent. And the fifth house is the house of fun and joy and sex and children and being free and creativity and allowing yourself to be who you truly are and enjoy music, enjoy, you know, running through a field of daisies, right? It's a very childlike house. And the fifth house may have been shamed for being childlike as a child. Okay, you may have been ashamed, like, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that, right? This is the fifth house. I know this is all about childhood wounds and past life wounds, but the fifth house, more than the other houses, is also about childhood. So it's like a double whammy of childhood. Okay. And are you able to do something just for fun? Sometimes people with this placement make a job out of every hobby they have. Okay. And, you know, some people can stay not grown up for a long time. Were you discouraged from expressing yourself when you were growing up? Or are you like completely abandoning growing up and just being a child the rest of your life? That's the opposite side of it too. That's something that isn't healthy. It's like, how can you bring creativity into growing up? How can you still have fun and joy without turning everything into a job, or without escapism, right? Without like, just, hey man, I'm here for the art. Like do that. But can you also have a successful life? Maybe your job is around being creative. So as long as you're not ashamed of it in any way, shape, or form, you may have talent, and sort of working with this energy. This deals with your creativity and your playfulness. A lot of people with this placement too can have a hard time letting go and allowing lovers to see them, can have a hard time going deep in a sexual relationship. They can have a hard time with that. So because they're told on some level they're not okay. So your healing mantra is, I'm the creator of my emotional reality, or I'm connected to spirit and I trust my intuition, or it's safe to experience joy. People with this placement also may have trouble getting pregnant, may have trouble having children, or may have a lot of complications in childhood. They may have children who have a lot of special needs or something along those lines. Okay. So that's the 5th house. I create. Think about creativity. Having children is a creative expression of you. It's an expression of you and another person. So that's part of the 5th house too. The 6th house is the wound of perfection. And the 6th house is about releasing control. So this is also throat chakra. And this may be a sensitivity to how you fit in or you don't, how others receive your work or don't. And some people with this placement may become workaholics. Some people with this placement may completely be unable to have long-term jobs. Like they feel like they lose jobs all the time, or they just go down a certain road. And so there's usually something here about a wound. Could be a past life wound, or could be a this life wound. And does giving too much harm your health? Okay. Do you give too much? People with the 6th house placement can be known as sacred servants, and they can overgive a lot. This is also the house of daily routines, health and fitness, and the balancing of that. Some people have a placement here and they had some kind of, just like in the 1st house, a little bit of similarity to the 1st house in that it can have to do with your body. But this is more around your health, as not just around the physical experience of having a body. This is about what are you doing with your body. And so the little phrase I wrote for 6th house is I heal. There's a lot of healers in this house, but it comes when you heal something about yourself. That's the healing modality to do for other people. So it's not just like, oh, I'm a healer if my Chiron's in the 6th house. You have to go through this journey and do the healing of yourself, whatever the issue is. And that's likely something that you could make into a day job, okay? Because the 6th house is the house of day jobs. The wound of perfection, it can be, some people, like, they won't even go down a road if they don't know that it's going to be a success. They won't even do it. Or they start a lot of things and then they never create a routine around them, so that it never takes shape in their lives. And so that's something to consider. With this house, releasing control, particularly in areas of health or day jobs, may feel powerless. Control, it's really about, your job is to trust. Your job is to not overdo. Your job is to understand how your health and fitness, how your daily life routine can be balanced. Okay. And if you're having problems with that and you don't know why, this might be a past life issue, right? If you continually get fired or something and you're like, I really don't know what I'm doing wrong here, there may be something there. Okay. Now, 7th house is the wound of relationships, and 7th house is known as I connect. All right. So healing karma from past life relationships, struggle around relationships. Your lesson here is to cultivate healthy relationships. And before you do that, in order to do that, you must cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself first. That's the road to healing this. Okay. So if you have the seventh house placement and you have, relationships that are out of balance, do you lose yourself into relationships, or are you too focused on the self and don't really have relationships or the way you want them to? Are you somebody who always focuses on unavailable people? Like, this is the place where all of the tarot readings I do around relationships might have some connection to Chiron in the seventh house, because I see those patterns in a lot of the readings. So this is about, I am love, I give love, I can receive love, I am open to giving and opening to receiving. Balance though, okay? Balance. Seventh house is the house of I connect. All right. Eighth house, let's see, okay. Eighth house is the wound of control. And this is your solar plexus chakra. This is intense, emotional shared experience. Eighth house is deep, all right? Eighth house is the stuff that goes on behind closed doors, the things we are shamed about. And especially if you have an eighth house Chiron, there was a lot going on behind the scenes, okay? There was a lot. Now, a lot of people that I have come across, it's almost as common to have an eighth house, childhood wound as a past life wound. Some of the other houses, seem more like they're in this life. I mean, this is just, the more charts I see, the more it could be balanced in every single house. But this one feels a lot like past life stuff to me. And this is also this can be, about self-worth. This is a lot about self-worth. This can be, this is usually the house of childhood sexual abuse. These are things that are shameful. Your family might have found shameful about you. And this is the eighth house is about I transform. So this is about going through some deep, powerful, life-changing work. And there is something here about your relationship to sex. Okay, just like the fifth house, when I was talking about like being able to be free and open, there's also that in this house, the wound of control, because love and sex are about relinquishing control in many ways. It's about not trying to drive how every little thing works. It's sort of more like being open and allowing. And if you have been shamed in any way, shape, or form about intense emotional experiences, about sex, about birth or death, if you've been through a lot of death in your life, this particular placement is about relinquishing control and knowing that we all go through these experiences. It's not really just you, but it's also something that needs to come out of the shadows. And the healing mantra here about I transform, it really is about I am worthy of pursuing my passion and purpose. Eighth house is the house of deep longing, deep beliefs, deep wanting, and connection to spirit. Eighth house is connection to spirit, just like eighth house. 12th house is also about your connection to the divine. It's a mystical house. And the fourth house is connection to ancestors. So the gift here, when you work through this, is an opening to the mystical, all right? An awareness of the meaning of life. This is a big picture kind of look at, we all experience birth, death, sex, transformation in our lives. And there's some kind of special gift that when you work, this is the deepest one, this in the 12th house, in my view anyway. This is the deepest one, the deepest bruise, and it's also the biggest reward, okay, for working with this. I transform. So it's about becoming intimate with your most deepest, darkest fears and worries, okay? That's the eighth house. Woo, eighth house. Oh my God. All right. Ninth house is the wound of belief. And this goes to your sacral chakra. This is connected to sacral chakra. This can be about disappointments and issues due to beliefs. So you might have been raised in a very structured belief system, like a very strict religious household, or, everybody in your family is this, right? Everybody in our family is meat eaters. How dare you be a vegan? Okay. And because it's based in a belief system, and it's the wound of belief is about like becoming disenchanted with a belief system that makes you feel unsafe as a child. Like you're just like, this is not me. I'm not part of this. And, do you feel like your family's beliefs affected you and your path in this life? Did you want to pursue a path of education? Ninth house, the house of education too, or exploration, or this can also be the house of really being interested in another culture. So a lot of people can find themselves like, I totally am dating myself with this. I know every time I make a MASH reference, I think about it, but it is classic. So there was a guy early in MASH who, he's born in like East Orange, New Jersey or something. And he, in a past life, he thought he had been like a kabuki girl in Japan. Like he was so drawn to Japan. It was just such a big deal to him. And I remember thinking to myself at the time when I see that episode, I'm like, ninth house. It's about being drawn to another culture, or it can also be the house of escapism, where you want to, not like the 12th house, but more like, I want to be part of another belief system because, my belief system is making my life miserable in this group of people in my family. So you can be drawn to travel and explore and sort of run away in that way. And, were you allowed to pursue a belief system that you wanted to? I had lots of friends who, I grew up Catholic, and there was I had at least a handful of friends. All of them did different things in high school. One went to be a Buddhist, and there was just all kinds of interesting, this is the house of belief systems, and religions, political systems are all part of that. Okay. The healing mantra here is, I am the creator of my own worldview. The little phrase I use about the ninth house is, I seek. So you're constantly seeking validation for your beliefs, or to destroy other people's beliefs. You might have disappointments and feel completely, I don't know. It's like figuring out that Santa Claus doesn't exist. Like you're just so disappointed about, what has, you see people who you think are like a pastor or a minister doing things that you are like, how come they're doing that? Like that's totally against the belief system. You could become very disenfranchised by people in your life around these belief systems if you have this placement. So this is, you're also healing your relationship to your sense of adventure. So you might believe that, okay, I've got to stay within the belief system of my family. I can't marry this person of another culture. I can't go and become a digital nomad because my family wouldn't, right? So there's a little bit around that. And, you may have been confined. Where's my boot? You may have been confined or trapped or jailed or something like that in a past life that you're not allowed. There's no way for you to be exploring the world or anything like that. You might have been really confined, and you might have been confined in this life too, that you're not allowed to do. Your parents might have this belief around money that you can't go anywhere because we don't have enough money. That can filter itself into any of these houses. All right, so that's the ninth house. 10th house is the wound of recognition. And, this is the house, 10th house is the house of I pursue. So this is about maybe having obstacles to the career you want to create. You struggle with self-worth around going for the career of your choice. Do you feel held back? And, you may have been if this is a past life wound, you may have been a kind of a big shot in a past life and then lost it all. And so you don't believe you could build it back again, or you think that, getting success. I think this is a lot of where fear of success happens to people, is that in a past life, they've attained a high level of success and then lost all their money. And so in this life, they just believe that that's going to happen again. Okay. And so in this life, it's okay to be powerful and hold on to what you've created. It's okay to do those things. So this is around professional achievements and status. You may be constantly jealous of other people getting promoted. You may constantly feel like you're never recognized at work. And it's really about shifting the definition of what success is for you, and also healing this root, because this will give you power in the 3D world. It really will. If you work with this, this is root chakra. This is about being able to be stable. Okay. And if you allow the wound of recognition about I'm 35, I should be a vice president by now, right? Like if you allow those things to drive you instead of what is satisfying and what is fulfilling to you, if you're allowing yourself to be driven by some of these other things, then that's going to create some issues. And it's really about getting to the root of all of these things. And I pursue is the energy of the 10th house. The energy of the 11th house is the wound of humanity. And this is about holding your own vision for yourself and humanity. This deals with groups and friends and social justice or humanitarian causes. This is about creating meaningful friendships, not intimate relationships. That's 7th house. This is more about having a really strong network and about doing things that are good for the collective. And, do you feel emotionally impacted by suffering and inequalities in the world? Do you see what is happening and feel powerless to change it? The 11th house is about creating vision. Okay. It's about having a vision and supporting your vision. And it's also about dreaming. I used to think that this was what Pisces was about. And I'll get to Pisces in a sec, or not Pisces, but 12th house. Well, Pisces and 12th house, but 12th house I used to think it was about I dream, but I think 11th house is the house of I dream, because it's about dreaming a better world into existence. And, this is a little bit about letting your freak flag fly, because only through innovation can the world change. The world doesn't change sitting on a couch, watching reruns of MASH. And it really requires you to have a vision and even have a little rebellion, because getting out of your comfort zone is what innovates for the collective. And some people who have this wound never feel like they can step out of themselves. They don't believe they're strong or supported or abundant. And, really allowing yourself to dream and then allowing yourself to put something into play. And it does have to do with our collective betterment, the collective betterment of the world. The gift that you get from this is building stronger relationships, because you're not just doing something for yourself, you're doing something for all of us. And your connections to other people with this 11th house mean that when you start to put your dream out there, your vision out there, you've got a lot of people who are going to help and support you in all different walks of life. So that's kind of an interesting twist with that, about relationships are super important to 11th house wound. And the 12th house is the wound of betrayal. The 12th house is most likely to be a deep spiritual past life psychic wound, more than any of the other houses. 4th house, 12th house, and 8th house are the psychic houses, but the 12th house wound can come from a place, a lot of times comes from a past life place. And you can see this wound in the hypersensitivity to the energies of the collectives, to endings and completions, to shadow self, to the unconscious. And I feel like people with this placement have emotions come out of them that they don't know where they come from. And they cannot really interact with the world when there's people or animals or anything gets hurt. They just like can't even. Okay. And this does, the 12th house is It rules spirituality in many ways. And it is the little phrase I wrote is I transcend. So you may have been cast out for your beliefs in another lifetime. Okay. You may have been somebody who, was a witch, right? And you're cast out of the 16th century group of people that you belong to because, at the time everyone was like, boiling them in oil. So that could come from when you have the Chiron in your 12th house, you really could have been someone who was persecuted for your beliefs. And especially spiritual beliefs, not any beliefs, spiritual beliefs. So you're learning it's safe to practice any kind of belief system you want, your healing or your relationship to your soul. So my friend who I was talking about is a theater guy, and his family is much more interested in him becoming some kind of, crazy CEO that is a hard charger and all this. And he's just not that. He has a belief system around joy. And they just think that that's crazy. They ostracize him and everything like that. And I feel like in his past life, he was somebody who was like a court jester or something like that, and probably beheaded for his entertaining personality, right? He's Nathan Lane. That's who he is. And he's like completely unable to, the telltale sign is talented and unable to do it in this life. So when you look at these things, I'm sure, because this is a lot of these house placements and all of the things I said, you can have these experiences without having Chiron there. But I want you to focus on your placement of Chiron. You may resonate with a lot of these things, and that's all fine. All that's saying to you is do shadow work. That's what that's saying to you. If you're like, oh shit, that's me, but that's not my Chiron placement. It's telling you there's shadow work to be done. Okay. Okay. So when I'm going to go through the signs here now, some of you who know astrology may realize that the first house is very similar to Aries. The second house is very similar to Taurus, because those are the natural houses. Those are the natural rulers. Aries is the natural ruler of the first house. So when I just went through all those houses, I'm going to go through the signs, and there's going to be a little bit of a similarity to what I just said. Now play it out in the 12 signs as were played out in the 12 houses. So Aries, a wounded Aries, if you have Aries, whatever house it's in, if it's in Aries and that's the wound, that's the place of the wound, you may also feel like you have no right to exist or overly self-sufficient. This is the energy through which your wound is expressed. If you're balanced, if you have worked with this wounding, then you feel lovable, you feel worthy, and you feel worthy of being seen. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Is the wounded one is the unconscious one. It's the one that needs to be worked with. If you're having these feelings and you have Aries in your placement, whatever house it's in, you may express yourself in such a way that I have no right to exist, or don't anybody deal with me, I can do it myself. Okay, that's the wounded Aries. Taurus, the wounded Taurus, is someone who really lacks self-worth or feeling solid or safe. They feel very shaky, baby. Okay. If they're balanced, if Taurus is balanced, there's a forgiveness of the inner child. There's worthy of committed love. They feel worthy of things. Taurus, a wounded Taurus, does not feel worthy of things. Okay. Gemini, if this is the sign you have your Chiron in, a wounded Gemini can be overly intellectualizing things, can be, not letting yourself feel. You're just like, okay, I'm just going to read 25 books about this, and I'm not going to go deep into my own feelings. I have a ladybug. Again, I have had ladybugs all week long. I'm so happy that that's my new friend. Okay. So if you have Gemini and you're wounded, the wounded Gemini comes out as being overly intellectual or caught in self-destructive thoughts. Gemini is an air sign. It's all about thoughts, right? But if you're balanced, if you have Gemini energy in your Chiron placement, a balanced Gemini is about being heart-centered, being able to express your thoughts, but through the energy of your heart, like it's heartfelt, right? It's authentic. If you have Cancer as the energy, then the wounded Cancer is abandoned, unlovable, I'm disgusting, don't look at me. But a balanced Cancer is nurtured and nurturing. Self-love from the inner mother in here, okay? And that's what it will look like after you work with that energy, okay? A wounded Leo is very self-critical or boastful. So, has a very self-deprecating sense of humor and means it, or look at me, I'm awesome. A balanced Leo is passionately creative and productive. That's nice. A wounded Virgo is absolutely broken, unable to cope, and usually a hypochondriac. A balanced Virgo is joyful and able to follow healthy routines. So you see how this is working. It's like you can see that, and this can be applied to anything, but let's apply it to Chiron tonight, because what you really want to do is you want to go deep and you want to heal this and you want to work with this energy of whatever sign it's in to help you get there. Okay. A wounded Libra is a codependent. You can be a codependent without having your Chiron in Libra, but a wounded Libra is definitively codependent, an underdeveloped sense of self and relationships. But a balanced Libra is artistic, expressive, and creative, and can allow another person to do for themselves, right? You don't have to control everything. You can allow people to do things for themselves, even if they're your significant other. A wounded Scorpio. Okay, wounded Scorpio energy is tough. It's paranoid, insensitive, addicted to sex. It can be addicted to anything. It's a very addictive sign, or has a potential of being that anyway, and unable to manage anger. A wounded Scorpio is very competitive in an unhealthy way. You can have healthy competition, but I'm talking about an unhealthy competition, meaning that they would accuse everybody else of cheating, even though they had no proof. And this is something that is hard to get out of when you have a wounded Scorpio. A balanced Scorpio is trusting and sensitive and very emotionally intuitive. All right. That's beautiful energy for the healthy Scorpio. Sagittarius, when wounded, is very self-righteous and argumentative and blunt, with the full-on intention of hurting someone. Okay. But a balanced Sagittarius is committed to justice, self-empowered, and adventurous. Capricorn is a wounded Capricorn, can be controlling and greedy and opportunistic and have a fear of failing. But a balanced Capricorn can be confident and mindful and able to ask for help. That's a big one for Capricorn, being able to ask for help. Aquarius energy, if it's wounded, is disappointed in the self, disconnected from one's body, self-destructive. This is a cutting kind of experience, feels invisible. Okay. If Aquarius energy as balanced, is in touch with their intuition and able to express their feelings. And finally, a wounded Pisces feels victimized, caught in addictive habits, depleted and overgiving. But a balanced Pisces is able to create healthy boundaries, nurturing to self, highly empathic, trusting intuition. So those are all the signs. And I think this is probably going to help you more than anything else I'm doing tonight. This is a sentence that you should write it down and work with it. My deep wound has to do with my childhood experience around the house, whatever house your Chiron's in, and I can see it manifested by the sign. So this is my sentence. My deep wound has to do with my childhood experience around my unique blend of creativity and expression not being supported or encouraged. Fifth house. And I can see it's manifested by my feeling of being victimized and a tendency to escape into addictions or overgiving to get approval. Pisces. So work with this sentence. I think this is going to help you more than anything else, because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take two pieces of information and kind of bring them together, okay, in this situation. So, astrology can be, I think, shockingly opaque to a lot of people because they're like, okay, well, I'm an Aries, but they're discounting everything else in their chart and the house placements and, right? It's complex. So let's focus on Chiron, and this sentence may help you do it better than anything else. My deep wound has to do with my childhood experience around the house it's in, and I can see it manifested by the sign. Okay. Now, when you're activating your power, you're putting this together now. The awareness of the wound. Awareness is like the only way that you're going to be able to heal and work with this. So if it's not resonating for you that my childhood wasn't like that at all, then can you consider this might be a past life thing? There's a reason it's there. It's not just there like, oh, well, we didn't know where to put the Chiron and we had to put it in some house, so it's in the 5th house. It's there for a reason. Okay. So even if your own childhood didn't really bear this out, there's definitively something in your life that's poking at you, and it could be a past life issue. When you embrace your wound, the shadow self, the inner child work and grieving process, this is something to really embrace. Embrace the complexity, embrace the lack of perfection. That's where people's character really comes from. Think about, like, a perfect person is really annoying because they not only are there's nothing to grab onto. It's like and there is no such thing as a perfect person, but somebody who's pretending to be perfect, there's nothing to grab onto, and they want it that way. And the reason they want it that way is because they don't want to have connection with other people. Only through your flaws can you have connection with other people. The gift of this wound is we are all imperfect, and through a celebration of our imperfections, we become stronger, and we have something to connect to with each other. And that's really where we're going with ascension, is we all have fucked up things in our life that we're trying to work through. It's really okay. And that's, for those of you, I mean, all of you are on the spiritual path. If you're here, you definitely are. And, it's only through their imperfections can we become stronger. And when I was working with this information, I think it's really interesting to see, like, if you pay attention to any of like the Marvel universe or Superman, Captain America, Black Widow, all of these stories, these people became these heroes, superheroes, became superheroes because they pushed into their weakness. Okay. They pushed into their weakness. Captain America was a weakling and really focused on becoming stronger. His rage about being a weakling pushed him into becoming someone stronger. He just didn't give a fuck anymore. He just wanted to be the guy that everybody, got on his back, and he was like all about America and everything like that. He just didn't care that his body wasn't really doing it. And so he went to endless lengths to become Captain America. Black Widow, the story of her grief, and Superman, his kryptonite and his parents, dying on the other planet or whatever it was. But all of these things, it's like they went toward their weakness. The Hulk, rage is his weakness. It's also his biggest strength. And that's the same thing for you guys. So the key to working with it is loving these things, embracing them, and calling them super. That's why they're called superheroes, because their strength, their weakness has become their strength, and they save humanity because of their strength. And that's the same thing that's for all of us. And that's the same thing that's for you. So in celebrating this, Chiron brings the medicine through for other people. You're really here to heal this thing in yourself so you can help other people. That's really why this even exists. So I gave you that Chiron meditation. I hope you liked it. I saw a couple of notes about that. That's super awesome. I encourage you to work with this, and you first heal this wound by letting it be seen by you, and then letting it be seen by others. I mean, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road. So I did put a bunch of stuff in here about aspects. So when you're looking in your chart, some people in my classes, they ask me like, well, what does it mean if I have a square to my Jupiter and all this kind of stuff? I've given you all of these things because conjunctions, meaning it's right on top of each other, they infuse energy from Chiron into the natal planet or point of that. So it's something that works together when things are in conjunction. So if you have your Chiron right on top of another planet, maybe 1 degree each way, but not more. If it's like 5 degrees away, it's not a conjunction, okay? It's like those two things are working together. So if you are Chiron right on top of your Jupiter, that means the Jupiter is the planet of luck and expansion. So when you really work with your Chiron, expand, right? Your life expands. If you have a sextile is trigger and poke at your natal planet, sometimes not stopping until you respond. A key is to choose conscious intention, so you're not going to go off half-cocked. Sextiles is kind of a easy energy, right? It's a little poke, but it's an easier energy. Squares are about friction. And so a square, whatever planet you have square, like if you have Saturn 90 degrees, a square is 90 degrees. And so it's putting tension and pressure on Chiron and vice versa. So squares basically say, Chiron is saying to your natal planet or point, right? The other thing that's in square too is there's something else you need to be doing or do something differently. Let me show you how. That's what a square means, all right? A trine is, again, a very nice energy. It sends a boost of energy, which is beautiful. Oppositions bring about challenge and confrontation. So revealing to you something about how you're using this energy and how can you step into it for better, healthier patterns regarding how you deal with emotions and energetic sensitivity. Oppositions are challenging and they're meant to help you balance, right? It's bringing about it's showing you an imbalance. Okay, so like I said, I put all of these things in here for your awareness. Chiron moon, whatever the aspect is, shows nurturance issue. Chiron sun aspect, being me is wrong, so I should hide. Okay, depending on what the aspect is. Chiron with Mercury, I'm not smart enough. Okay, that can be part of the problem here. Chiron with Venus is the belief that love hurts, right? These are beliefs that are driving your life. Chiron and Mars, whatever the aspect is, expressing anger will get me in trouble. And so these are people who repress anger and it blows up in the most unwanted way. Chiron and Jupiter, believing hurts. This is a wound to the belief system. And like I was talking about, if it's in a good aspect, meaning a conjunction or a trine, it is about believing is the thing once you work with the Chiron and it will expand. But the key here is work with the Chiron. Work with the Chiron placement in order to activate some of these other issues. And then I put Saturn in here, a Chiron Saturn aspect, believing you're inadequate. A Chiron Uranus is an I don't belong, a massive fear of standing out. Chiron and Neptune, my feelings aren't important, right? You can see all of these things. And Chiron Pluto, I can't even see the bottom of my pain. With Chiron and Pluto aspect, you have a deeper issue than most. This is really about a past life thing. Pluto, 12th house, Pisces, those placements are usually past life, usually. And the key is doing shadow work so that you can see them. Because if you can't see them, they just show up in whatever way they want to, and then that wreaks havoc on your life. So you're going to have to do a lot of shadow work to get it to raise it into your consciousness. Shadow work takes things out of the unconscious and raises them into the consciousness. Okay, so before we go to questions, and I know we have a lot, I'm going to get to as many as I can tonight. The Chiron transits through each sign. So a highly elliptical path. So some signs it stays only a year and a half, and other signs it stays up to 9 years. So it spends the most time in Pisces and Aries, right? First house and Pisces and Aries, natural rulers of the first house and the 12th house. And spends most time 8 to 9 years in Pisces and Aries, and only 1 to 2 years in Virgo and Libra. Those are across the hall. So if you're almost 50 years old, you're going through a Chiron return. All right. So that can mean as Chiron moves through the zodiac, we are offered different challenges and growth opportunities colored by the houses and the signs it flows through. So your Chiron could get pretty loud around age 50, just saying. Okay. So you want to challenge yourself to step fully into your power, into your unique self. I put some of these, you know, you guys already know where to get your charts done, but I'm ready, Jessica, for questions, and do your best to make it interesting for everybody. This is not a private reading, right?
Sure thing. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Let's see. Kimberly wants to know, how do we overcome the wounds once we recognize them?
So that's learning about shadow work, and that, you know, you could pretty much, there's a lot written about shadow work. So once you recognize them, it depends on what the wound is, but recognizing them is a big step. And shadow work is about seeing something and then being able to incorporate it into your life so that it's no longer being shoved down. It's no longer being, you know, it's no longer embarrassing to you. It's no longer hampering your life. Okay. So it really, that's when shadow work takes hold. So let me see if I can give you an example of shadow work. Terrified of public speaking. So you do the work. So maybe you have a third house, Chiron, and you have a hard time with expressing yourself. You're terrified of public speaking, you know, and it just happens to be that your Chiron's in the third house. So you want to know why about this. So you can do journaling, you can do meditation, you can do past life regression. That's a really good way of understanding what's holding you back. But then once you know about it, awareness is such an aha. And I want to say this, I was saying this to Jessica before the class started, that this week we're having an eclipse. We're starting eclipse season. All right. And that's happening on the 19th. And it's an eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse in Taurus. Okay. It's a lunar eclipse in Taurus. In this season, so from now through this let's see, the 19th of November is the lunar eclipse. December 4th is a partial solar eclipse. And what happens is it's accelerating your spiritual growth. So this week can start a lot of aha moments for people. I'm so glad we're doing this Chiron this week, because once you have aha moments, once you know what your Chiron's about, it's almost like you can't unsee it. And the path becomes a lot clearer as to how to work with it. So back to my example about public speaking, you can then, if you understand why it's like that, that does clear it up somewhat. If you understand that it was a past life, you know, you might have been beheaded for speaking in the public square. You may have, like, that's a hell of a deterrent for most people. Or you might have been a child and being told to be quiet all the time. So once you realize where that fear comes from, all of these are fear-based. Once you see it, that fear diminishes quite a bit. Just seeing it is a big part of this. And any kind of healing modality you choose that you feel drawn to around these wounds is likely to help you. So there's not just one size fits all. When we say shadow work, it is a super broad thing. So once you have awareness of it, then it seems like you can chart your path of how to work with that energy. Okay. Okay. All right, Jessica.
Oh, okay. To piggyback off that, someone asked if you have any suggestions for learning about shadow work. Do you have any websites or books or anything like that you recommend?
Let's see. I think that might be something that I do have a couple of good books about it. I know Christina Lopes she's another YouTuber, and she does some really good videos about shadow work. I would definitely recommend her videos. So I would go check her out. And, shadow work, like I said, can be past life stuff, or it can be about, oh, it's really obvious. I know what this is about in my life now. So I think those two things kind of create a different path. If you're clueless about like, why is this a problem for me? I'm going to recommend that you do some past life regression. Okay. Mary Lee Lasardo does past life regression, and we're doing another past life regression. I can't remember when it is, but we are doing another one with her. And we also have a class of hers that I think is a recorded class that you can, use at your leisure. I highly recommend doing something like that, because, we have lifetime after lifetime, and this lifetime is about, working through some of those lessons. And so that's what I would recommend. It depends on whether you think it's past life or that it's in this life. That might be two different things. But Christina is a good one to look at, and also Mary Lee. Okay.
Okay. If you have 0 placements in a house, can you still have wounds or triggers? I have nothing in my 8th house, but everything you talked about resonates.
There's really no such thing as having no planets there, because you have a sign there, and the sign has a ruling planet. Okay. So you may not have, so I have Gemini, all right, in my 8th house, and in that 8th, so Gemini's ruler is Mercury. So it may have something to do with Mercury placements. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any resonance for you. You also should look at your progressed chart, because everything keeps moving. So if you're having issues with your 8th house right now, 8th house is one of the big ones. And I doubt there's a person on this planet that doesn't have some issues around death and transformation. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean, tracking back to why we're doing this class, Chiron is about healing something for you so you can bring the medicine to the world. If you don't have any placements, any planets in there, or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that your job is to help others heal in this way. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. If Chiron is a point in a natal chart and the experience happens early in childhood after you were born, does Chiron position predefine the area of this trauma in our childhood?
I don't think I understand that question.
I think she's saying if the trauma happens in early childhood, is it predefined by Chiron?
Oh yeah, I mean your astrology chart is cast based on the things the challenges, the obstacles, the wins, and the losses that you are likely to face in this life. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think in other classes I might have let's see, I might have put where. Yeah, so I put in this appendix top psychic gift indicators, indicators of financial success. These are all placements that can indicate something happening in your life at some point. I even had an astrology reading, I think it was with Braca, and she told me like, oh, you were not going to have any kind of success until you were 50, until you were 48 or whatever she said. She was like, because of this, and this, I'm seeing that, you were going to be a late bloomer, right? This thing makes me think it's going to be a late bloomer. Astrology is art. It does have mathematical placements to it. There's no doubt about that, because it's based on astronomy, which is where the stars are and where the sun is and all of that. But it's an art of divination, just like tarot is. So, the more, I want to say this to you, the more you work with all of this stuff, the more you transcend your chart, the more the chart becomes meaningless over time, because you're seeing something, like I said, awareness, seeing something, working with something means it's not a death sentence. It means it's not like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get out of my own way. So if someone told me that I wasn't going to be a success until I was 45 in early life, does that mean I would have just like, okay, stick of butter on everything, feet on desk, I'm not going to do anything? Depends on how you would see that. But there's placements in your chart that can indicate you have free will, you can activate things. Who is it that said this? I guess this was, oh God, he survived the Holocaust. He said, the only thing I can really control is my reaction to anything. So your reaction to your astrology chart is ever so important. And are there things in there that are determined and destined to come apart in your life? Yes, but how do you respond to them? That's really the bigger piece. Okay. All right.
What does it mean to have both Chiron and the sun in the same placement?
It may not mean anything. Chiron, if it is really close to it, if it's like a conjunction, it can mean that you are very, very much about like, I'm not worthy of being seen, right? I think I went through that. With one of my placements here that I talked about having that the sun, I was talking about the sun, and that can mean like, I'm not worthy of being seen. But if it's kind of far away, then, planets that are more than 3 degrees away have much less impact than ones that are in conjunction or a trine or a square or anything like that. That's how they talk to each other, through the aspects. If it's, like, 17 degrees away, it's not really having a ton of impact. Okay.
I feel like I have more than one trauma.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Are all of them part of the deep wound, and are all of them equally important to heal?
No. Not everything is priority one. Okay. And so focus on your Chiron, focus on North Node. This is the thing. If you feel like you have these other traumas and stuff like that, do the work. But your Chiron is about bringing medicine to other people. It is something that you could use to help other people grow from your experience. If you have a trauma, and you have overcome something, can it certainly be part of what you're here to do in this life? Absolutely. But Chiron is a special case. All right. Chiron is, it's almost like magical medicine that could really help other people. And so you're being given that placement to work with that in particular. Okay. So it's not everything is weighed as heavily as Chiron. Okay.
If we start working on our Chiron now, at say age 40, will it be less life-shattering at 50?
It doesn't need to be life-shattering. I feel like I think we all try. What I hear, it's so interesting, is like everyone's trying to get through with like the minimum amount of upsetness or obstacles, but that's really what life's about, is about bringing something to awareness. Does lessen the impact of surprise, for sure. It does lessen the tower moments, because you're not holding on to this idea or ideal of, life is about me coming into this body and having a childhood and going to school and getting married and retiring, and that's it. If you're on the spiritual path, that's really not true for you. It's really not. And you're on the spiritual path. You're part of this because you're being asked to be a leader for other people. You're being asked to do this healing work and have these obstacles so that you can show other people it's possible. And there's millions of people on this planet who are not there. They don't do the spiritual work. They have no idea about, they just think they go from, they just gamble about, right? They just go from obstacle to obstacle, and they just assume it's just how life is and stuff. but you guys on the spiritual path are really here to pull them along, okay, by doing this work, by being an example. Okay, so earth shattering or not, that's what it's here for. Okay.
Okay, what do you do if you don't know your birth time? I noticed a sign stays the same, but when the house changes every couple of hours, how do you get a true understanding of your placements? And also, will a lunar eclipse affect you if you have Chiron and an eclipse in Taurus affect
All
you?
right, so hold on to that second question about eclipse, all right, because that's something separate. So hold on to that. But if her question is, or her question is about not knowing birth time. So you're going to need to do everything you can to figure it out. Okay, so some of you get birth certificates that are not long form birth certificates. Long form birth certificates come from the hospital. They are filed with the town, but sometimes you can just, the town is whatever and gives you, just this shorty document. You can ask through public records to get the full long form. Now, somewhere in the 90s, I think different towns have different rules about things. And so that may have all gone by the wayside, in terms of getting documentation of birth time. I also think after 2000, a lot of hospitals were like, we don't have time for this birth time nonsense. We've got people to heal. We can't be, having nurses writing down the birth time. So I feel like in some way that might have gone away. So what you can do is you need to ask your family, not your parents really, because I feel like because they're having a baby, they might not have necessarily the best awareness. As your mother's best friend might be a better person to ask, your aunt, your older sibling, or somebody like that, who's kind of the next level of people, because they'll remember more, than maybe your mom who was in it. Right. And there's no windows in a birthing room necessarily. And so she might have been like, I don't know, it was nighttime. Right. So you might want to ask an uncle or an older sibling or a mom's best friend. The other thing you can do, I think there's a reclamation. There are some people out there, I don't have a recommendation to make on this, but they back into the birth time based on your life experience. Okay. It's spendy to do this. Okay. It's over $500 to do this, is for them to figure it out based on your experiences, your life challenges. And, they take what they got, but they still will not guarantee it within 2 hours. And the ascendant changes every 2 hours, and that maps your entire chart. So do whatever it takes, as much as you can, to try and get the accurate birth time. Garbage in, garbage out. You need the information in order to clearly get it. Chiron doesn't move all that fast, but the ascendant does, and that's the problem. Okay, because the ascendant changes every 2 hours, and that can completely change the mapping of your chart. So do whatever you can. Okay.
Okay. If you have a Chiron grand trine, does that simply increase the aspect's influence?
Yes, I think it does. And it's trine energy is very gentle energy. Okay. So that's kind of a nice experience. So what you want to do is you want to look at the planets involved. You want to look at the signs involved. And again, that sentence I gave you about how things work together, you want to see, like, if you have the grand trine is, I think it's 3 planets. I don't know off the top of my head, actually, but all of those planets and all of those signs that they're in all support your, I don't know, healing, I guess, of the Chiron, or it has something to do with it. So I wouldn't toss that out. That is important information. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. If I understand retrograde correctly, it means internal instead of external. But what
Wait a
does
minute,
that
say it
really
again,
mean?
Jessica. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm
What?
sorry. If I understand retrograde correctly, it means internal instead of external. But what does that really mean? Does that only relate to my Chiron and Pisces, my Chiron in the third house? I'm confused by retrograde. Thank you.
Okay, Chiron is, I'm sorry, retrograde. First of all, when when a planet is retrograde, it's usually going back over the same issue. Okay, so like that's a transit idea of retrograde. When you're born with something in retrograde, generally you want to take a look at the ephemeris of that year and see if it's at the beginning of the retrograde or at the end of the retrograde period, because that's when it's strongest. And what I mean by internal is that, Chiron is an internal thing anyway, but sometimes we can have our wounds played out on a public stage. Okay, especially if they're in houses from 7 to 12. If they're in houses 1 through 6, they're more personal experiences of these traumas. And when something is in retrograde, it is something that you are, dealing with inside yourself. So you're not getting fired from a bunch of jobs. Instead, you might be having emotional problems, right? With holding a job. Or I'm just using a job as a similarity. So the external experience of it is, I'm out in the world and things keep happening to me. It seems that way. Things keep happening to me. A retrograde is things coming from inside me. So I'm unable to, it can also be a physical problem. It can also be like, I'm unable to speak. I'm unable to defend myself, mental illness or something along those lines. But I think that's pretty rare. Okay. I really think that a Chiron in retrograde is more your own personal deal. Other people may not even realize that it's part of your experience. Okay. It's internal. That's what I mean by that. Okay.
Okay. How does Chiron influence the house and planets that it's across from?
In opposition.
Yes.
So opposition, if you've taken my North Node class, it's all about opposition, right? Because North and South Node are in opposition to each other. So a lot of astrologers say that oppositions are like a tug of war. But I personally believe that's true if it's unconscious. If you have, I'm going to pick on Jupiter again. If you have Jupiter across the way, or Mercury, let's say Mercury, if you have Mercury across the way, then the communication about things can seem to pull you off your game here as you're working with your Chiron, or it can be something that you're unable to communicate or something like that, right? It's like a push me, pull you kind of experience. I really believe oppositions are a call to balance. So both of these things need to be in equal importance to you or in equal strength to you. So we were talking before about priorities, like what's stronger and what's weaker. I think oppositions are pretty strong, but I think you're being asked to balance these two things. And, working with that, if I have Chiron in opposition to Mercury, like, I'm going to work with my Chiron first, but then I'm going to kind of do a little self-assessment as to whether my communication style is being hampered by this. Am I struggling with it? Am I, or now that I'm aware of it, can I use my communication to support it? Can I speak out about my Chiron placement? You wouldn't say that, but can I speak out about my own healing? And Mercury would be a great one to be in opposition, I think. So it's really about balance in my view. Okay.
Okay. My Chiron is trine MC. What does that mean and what is MC?
MC is your midheaven, and that is how midheaven is on the cusp of the 10th house, which is 10th house, the house of career, 6th house, the house of your day job. Day job, your 9-to-5 job and your career are kind of two different things, because the 6th house is the house of, going to work and coming home, your daily routines. But career, it's like overall, I'm a storyteller. Overall, this is how the world sees me. And when you have a trine is lovely energy. It's supportive, it's light, it's not difficult. So when you work with your Chiron, the world is going to see that in a favorable way, right? Trine midheaven. How is the world going to take that in a very favorable way? I think that's kind of a nice placement to have, actually. I like it. Okay.
Okay. What is the significance of Chiron and North Node both in the same house and sign?
Well, like I said, it has significance, I think, but it has more significance if they're in conjunction to each other, if they're right on top of each other. If they're not, if they're just sharing the same house and sign, then houses, when you think about houses are the part of your life impacted. Okay. So what part of my life is impacted by my inner woundings, by my karmic debt, by, that's a pretty big deal. So that part of your life is going to be a very important learning in this life. Okay. Learning the Chiron, learning and understand how you're wounded in that energy, and then having it be at the same place of, this is what I'm supposed to reach for in this life. So think about that. I'm supposed to embrace and learn the lesson of the thing that I am most wounded by. Okay. If the North Node and the Chiron are really far apart, then that energy is kind of muted, but it's still there. All right. If it's really close together, it could be a pretty strong experience that you're having to embrace the thing. So, I mean, I'll use a really hideous example of being like childhood sexual abuse. Then if that's the placement and it's in like a career placement, or if it's in a public placement, then you could be somebody who has to get out there and talk about it. Okay. And that North Node is a new language you're learning in this life. So, oh, Charlie is just crying because he's got a bone here and he's being annoying. But that can be really difficult to have to be public about something. So look at what house it's in and understand what the experience is. And then the energy of it is the sign. So that's something, thank you for asking that question. It can be quite powerful, I think. Okay.
Okay. One website says everything's in the 6th house, others say the 5th house. How do you know which one to pay attention to?
Well, I feel like somebody sent me a chart earlier this week. I'm sorry if he's crying. Somebody sent me a chart earlier this week and they were like, I don't understand. It was somebody I know. It's a friend of mine. And she was like, I think my Chiron's in the 6th house or my North Node's in the 6th house, but this other chart says it's in the 7th house. So I'm concerned. Usually that happens when there's two different systems being employed. There's a lot more astrology systems than just Western and Vedic. Okay. Western has about 12 or 14 different methodologies. Like I said, this is art. So for this class's purposes, we are looking at tropical Placidus Western astrology. Okay. Western astrology. If you're using a whole house astrology, that may change the house, because whole house astrology believes that each house should just be the full sign should be all in one house. Tropical Placidus doesn't necessarily. You may have in your chart that, all of my whole first house is Scorpio. So is that whole house or not? If you're doing tropical Placidus and it is balanced, so it has 30 degrees for each, sign and everything like that. It's based on your Western astrology. Tropical Placidus is based on your place on the planet. That's why they ask you for your birthplace. The further away you are from the equator, that impacts the size of the houses. Okay. And, or not the further away, but definitely latitude and longitude play a role here. So you want to make sure that if you're focused on this class, or you're focused on what's accepted in Western astrology as this is the system, it's tropical Placidus. If you're using a whole house, that is a minority. It's a like kind of a new wave. It's not really necessarily as accurate. There's plenty of people working on that right now to see if whole house is as accurate as tropical Placidus, but they haven't overtaken tropical yet. So, you know, if don't go messing around with the ways. I wouldn't, because to me, that's just going to mess you up massively. You'll be somebody who's like, yes, I'm both a Leo and a Cancer. I'm both of this and of that. You're not. This is more mathematical than you think. Okay. So I'm going to go into my little rant here about cusps is not a thing. If you're born 29 degrees Taurus, you're still a Taurus. 0 degrees Taurus, you're still a Taurus. Okay. It's kind of like being born, like your mother goes into labor on New Year's Eve and you're born at straight up midnight. You are born January 1. You are not born December 31st, January 1. So a cusp is really just the line between the two signs, but that line is 0 degrees. Okay. And so that means it's in that sign. So I'm done with my soapbox on that one. That usually comes up. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Where can we get our progressed Chiron?
So it's a chart called Secondary Progressions, and you can get that. I don't think Astro Charts does it. They may. I don't know. I can't remember. But Cafe Astrology, you can go there and get a chart called Secondary Progressions. All right. You'll be asked to put in your birth chart, and what it's going to do is it's going to show you how your planets have moved, and you're going to have to put in the date you want to start. So like today, I want to see my secondary progressions from, November 1st, 2021 through next year. And it will show you how the planets move. It'll show you your sun sign moves 1 degree for every year you're alive. So if I'm born at 17 degrees Sagittarius, it took it another 13 years to move out of Sagittarius, 30 years in Capricorn, and then it's into Aquarius now that I'm past 43 years old. It's into Aquarius for me. So my sun sign, I'm a progressed Aquarius, and I am expressing myself as an Aquarius now. I still have Sag, but I'm definitely, I feel that Aquarius energy pretty loud. So go to Cafe Astrology, I think. Okay.
Okay. I believe my wound is more from my past life. What's your advice on healing and doing shadow work?
My first thing is for you to do past life regression. I would actually, since you have a very specific need, I wonder if Mary Lee does something like very specific to shadow work, or not shadow work, to understanding the core of that past life wound. You do want to know where it comes from. I know it just may be like, oh, it's a historical story. It's just like, oh, I was a guy in Egypt and this happened to me. But the story that comes up in those past life regressions does have a lot of information. And it's not just enough to be like, okay, it's not in this life, it was past life. I think you do need to know where it comes from. So I'm going to recommend that. I'm going to recommend you do either a session with Mary Lee, or you can even, you don't even have to do that if you don't want to. You can do, I think on YouTube, there's a lot of meditations about past life, but I would prefer to be with somebody who knows what they're doing, honestly. Okay.
Okay. The Astro Chart sheet breakdown, Chiron says Aquarius, but the chart reads Capricorn. I'm so confused.
So when you say that again, say that question again.
Okay, on the breakdown sheet from Astro Charts, it's telling her that Chiron is an Aquarius, but when she looks on the chart, it looks like it's in Capricorn.
Okay, that's what I thought she said. Pay attention to the chart. Don't pay attention to, where'd it go? Don't pay attention to this as much if this is confusing you, okay? Pay attention to the listing. And part of Astro Charts further down, you see where each house starts. So it'll say, there'll be a list of oh, the first house starts at 17 degrees Aries. the second house starts at 18 degrees Taurus or whatever it is. Okay. But then you'll really know, because it'll list out, like, my Chiron is at 17 degrees Aries. Boy, it's right on the line in this circle chart. It's right on the line between the first house and 12th house. Just don't worry about that. Look at the chart, pay attention to the degrees, and it will tell you which house it's in. Okay. If you just look and see where the house starts, you can then say, oh, okay, if it starts at 17 degrees and mine is at 17 degrees, it's in that house then. What I just said to you about it's not in both, it's only in one. Okay. So pay attention to the chart, to the table, right, of listings. That's where you should pay attention to. Okay.
Okay. What does Chiron and T square mean?
Chiron in a T square. So a T square is when you have, let's see, I'm going to try to do this. Two planets that are squaring each other and one planet in opposition. So if you can think about squares as tension, then things, in order for you to do this work, it comes to you through stress and tension filled kind of experiences. The opposition is literally like pulling on you. So this is a challenging thing to have with Chiron. And what it's saying to you is you need to work with the two energies that are in square to each other. The only way to overcome this, to work with Chiron, is to face up to a square. A square is something that creates tension in your life. And so you might not really work with it until you get pushed into it. All right. It might be something that comes through a painful awakening or an awareness, or through an opposition, which is like pulling you off your path. All right. And you have to like do the work. You have to do the work. And it comes through a more stressful kind of experience than just, reading about it. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Hold on just a second. Lost my place.
Okay.
Since Pisces means end of the road and my Chiron is in Pisces, does this mean that I am almost at the end of the road in healing this wound?
I don't know where Pisces means the end of the road. Did I say that?
Oh, I don't. That's what the question said. I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't think I said that, but Pisces is not, Pisces is the edge of consciousness. Pisces is definitely, I'm going to take this away from Charlie. He's never crying usually, but Pisces is really about reaching out to the mystical realms for help. It can be about, you may not be able to solve it using your 3D experience. You might have to, use your mystical connections in order to work with it. All right. Meditation, past life regression. You may have to use more spiritual modalities in order to really get to the bottom of it. And what was the end of her question? That she's almost to the end of, I hate to tell you this, but life is really about working through these things. And that's what we're here to do for the whole of our life. There's really no, hey, I'm done, I can leave now. Even when you pass on, you're going to another situation. Okay, that's the spiritual path in a nutshell. To be true. Okay, Jess.
Okay. Do you have any insight regarding Venus and Pluto in opposition to Chiron?
So this is how you can work with any placement. Okay. Venus is about love. I think I put a lot of this in the class. Let's see. Did I? Where is that? All right. So Venus is the belief that love hurts. Natal Venus is about relationship to the self, feeling they don't deserve to be loved unconditionally, or they're not good enough. So Venus and Pluto. Pluto is the energy of transformation. All right. This is a deep pain a deep aspect. And when it's in opposition to Chiron, it is literally, oppositions are about balancing these two energies. So you kind of, it's almost a little bit like a double Chiron, in my view anyway. There's one energy that's about the pain of not being loved. And that is something that is transformative when you understand that you are loved. You're never alone, okay? You are loved by the universe. There is no such thing as no one being loved. And then what's the opposition? What house is it in? What sign is it in? And that's going to help you understand. I feel like something around love, something around the pain of not being loved is transformational. And the Chiron is going to be also kind of like integrated with that lesson. That's a really interesting question. Thank you for that. Because oppositions are about balance of these two things. It's not about one pulling on you, another pulling on you. These are likely two wounds that need the same amount of attention, but also may help you, that if you overcome the belief that, love has got to be painful, then that might help your Chiron learning right now, and vice versa. That's a cool question. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. A few people have asked, what does it mean when Chiron is square North Node?
So squares, again, how you work with this information is, what's a square? A square is about tension. So your wound can have something to do, can have some kind of stressor as it relates to what you're here to do on this planet. North Node is your work. It's the language you're here to learn. And if Chiron is square to that, it can mean your Chiron can derail the work you're doing with your North Node. So this is as much about awareness and shadow work. And by working with that Chiron and kind of getting it to a place, it's almost like it's behaving itself, or it can help inform how you then work with your North Node. Okay. I think that's an interesting placement to have. It's kind of a double whammy in my view. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Could you tell us a little about what Chiron and Novile and Quintile mean?
That's pretty weak beer. You know what I mean? It's like those aspects. If you're the master of the square and the opposition and the conjunction, the rest of them are weak in comparison. So I wouldn't go too far down that rabbit hole until you've mastered the rest of this. Okay. It's a very weak energy. It's just very weak. Okay.
Okay. I'm turning 49 next year and fully feel my Chiron return. I've always struggled to speak my truth. Anger has been my vehicle for speaking up, which generally blows up my relationships and leaves me silent and withdrawn. My Chiron is in the 3rd house in Aries. Do you have any suggestions for me?
Yeah, 3rd house is really about, it is about speaking out, like we talked about tonight. It is about speaking out. It is about communication. It's, I feel like the 3rd house has to do with your immediate community, your own backyard. I feel like you are able to work through this by being that Aries is Mars, and Mars has anger. And so you're going to need to work with anger. I think anger is the thing to work with, because you could really blow up your local communities, your intimate relationship, not intimate relationships, that's 7th house. This is more like your friends, your neighbors, your family and stuff. If you might need to move. Okay. And with that 3rd house placement, that's not what you need to do. Don't keep moving. Don't keep, destroying situations, and then work with the anger. Work with that. And that's going to make all of your relationships a lot stronger. You'll be able to communicate more effectively when you remove that. And anger Anger is really just fear turned sideways a little bit. When people lash out in anger, it's usually for a reason. I would do a lot of journaling around anger. That would be a very powerful exercise to do for yourself. Why, sometimes in a past life, you can also be somebody who wasn't able to speak. And so it's like Mars is the energy of, right? Like, I got to get it out of me. But working with anger is probably your most effective way of dealing with this. You'll get to the root of it. When you work with your anger, it'll make itself known. Guaranteed. Okay.
Okay. How does Chiron impact on twin flames journey?
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing. We talk a lot about that too with North Node, and it seems to me, because we're already talking about spiritual journey and how you guys are like saddled with this, I've got to work through my North Node, I've got to deal with my Chiron and all this kind of stuff, because you're aware of it, right? You want to know what the blocks are, you want to do it. So twin flame is a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of showing yourself warts and all to another person and them understanding it, even if that doesn't look like that in a 3D kind of experience. I think to truly know what it means is, number one, individual to each couple. And you can't know that until you know the other person, you can see their chart. When you do a chart with a twin flame, then you can really see like, oh, okay, I feel like, this is just my personal opinion, and I think this is also borne out in the North Node research I do all the time, is that North Node and Chiron, I believe that your counterpart has some kind of awareness or key or learning or experience that can help you learn this lesson. Okay. And it may come in a negative way, meaning that they mirror back to you the most hurtful, the most, embarrassing, it can come through that way, or it can come through an elevated way in a more mystical and, universal love kind of way, compassion, empathy. It can come through a higher vibration. Most people, because most partners have one of them that it's more unconscious than the other, it generally comes through a more hurtful way. So a lot of twin flames can have a partner who goes right to that little spot and makes you aware of it. Not only makes you aware of it, but makes you ashamed again. Okay. You can tell if the twin flame connection is further along or is more, the other person is more awake. Chances are they're not going to on purpose stick a stick in your deepest bruise on purpose, but there are a fair amount of unconscious and unawakened twin flames, and that's the danger of twin flame, is that they, in order to save themselves, they have to get away. They have to get out of this powerful connection. And so what do? They stick a knife right in your soft underbelly. And that's Chiron. Okay. So depends on where you are, depends on who the other person is, but that seems to have borne itself out in a lot of the conversations I've had anyway. Okay.
Okay. What does it mean if Chiron is in opposition to my ascendant?
So the ascendant is sort of the window that you come through in this life, and it basically maps your whole chart. The ascendant is the mask you show to other people, and Chiron is ripping that mask off. So again, oppositions are about balancing. So let's say your rising sign or your ascendant is Libra, about being diplomatic, and your Chiron is in Aries, and your Chiron in an unhealthy or abusive state is a fuck you to being diplomatic, then that mask gets ripped off, toot sweet. That's what that can mean. Okay. So get used to thinking of things. I mean, a lot of talk about oppositions tonight. Get used to thinking about, and we talk about this in the North Node class, about signs having opposites, and Libra and Aries, right? Taurus and Scorpio, Gemini and Sag. They have certain compatibilities to them, but they also have opposite energies that if you don't balance them, your Libra is not gonna be able to make a decision, and your Aries is like, fuck you, make a decision. Okay. So, you're going to need to work with these energies. It's basically just given to you as like a roadmap of all the things you need to learn in your life. So Chiron being opposite of ascendant can rip your mask off. Okay. All right, my darling. We have I'll take one more. We only have, it's almost 8 o'clock right now. One more.
Okay. What are some ways that I can step into my path and still be prominent in my 3D life? My Chiron is in 12th house Libra. Am I only supposed to pursue my past life as a witch?
12th house Libra, she said?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So 12th house is the house of transcendence, is the house of your connection to the mystical. With Libra is all about relationships. I have a feeling like you're bringing back a lot of information around how to be in relationship. So you're saying prominent. I kind of wonder about what you mean by that, about like, I feel like if you follow your North Node and you embrace that North Node energy, you work on your Chiron, not everybody is necessarily meant to be famous. I don't know if that's what she means by prominent, or at least maybe what she's saying is you're trying to balance these two kinds of life, the life that you want to create, that you think you want to create. I'm going to give you a journal prompt about this, because that prominent word is really important. So I would take a deep dive in your own, what do I mean by that? Do I want to be famous? Do I want to be, or is this a should? Is this something I think I should be? And is my Chiron kind of poking sticks at that? Like, 12th house is the house of alone, but it's also the house of mystical ascension. It's the house of shamans. It's the house of healers. And with Libra there, I got to tell you, like, I feel like that's about bringing back information to help us be better at relationships, to help you be better in this world about, being a diplomat or being someone who can work with other people. And that house is about being alone. So you're going to have to work on that. And I also think that prominent word, boy, that's a journal prompt. I think you should work on what you mean. Like, do you think that there's certain things, are you saying that this is what you want to create, or someone's telling you need to create it? And can you release yourself into what your mystical life is asking of you? And can that be okay? Because I got to tell you, I used to work for Good Morning America. I used to be in TV, on TV, and everything like that. And this path, this was more about personal transformation. This was about, enjoying myself, having fun, reading tarot and everything like that. Never did I think that I would be more well-known from doing this than I was working for Good Morning America. Never in a million years. But it was because I had this image of what I thought I was supposed to be versus what my calling actually was and what I'm here to do. And that's what makes you prominent, is that you're doing what you're here to do, because then you're aligned with your authentic self, and people are like, wow, it's just an energy, and people are drawn to it. They really are. So if you want to be prominent, follow your North Node and work on your Chiron. That's our last word tonight, my darling Jessica. So thank you for being here tonight. I hope this was helpful to you. And I know the Chiron is a little messier and a little uglier than North Node, but I promise you, if you work and do this work, it will take you far. And I will do more videos or helpful resources around shadow work? Thank you for that question. And thank you. I definitely want to recommend people who are doing good work around it. Like Christina Lopes is doing good work around it, but I also want to be able to share what I've learned about it too. So thank you very much tonight. Jessica, any kind of housekeeping stuff that we need to talk about?
I don't think so. I just apologize to anybody that didn't have their question answered. I tried
Okay.
to do the most, helpful to the whole group as I could.
Helpful to the whole group. I appreciate it. So we're going to put up, Jude is going to get the class, work with this recording, and you'll probably see it tomorrow. Colleen usually talks about, you'll probably see the recording tomorrow, and then you guys have the recording of this for ever and ever. Amen. All right, my darlings, have a good night. Have a good night's sleep. And I will see you tomorrow. All right. I hope this topic was interesting and insightful for you. If you have another topic that you'd like to hear me talk about or hear me teach about, drop a comment. If you want to learn more about your moon, if you want to learn more about where's my spouse in my birth chart or in a composite chart with another person, how do I understand if I'm a late bloomer? How can I understand my spiritual gifts? Any topic you'd like, I want to know about it. So please drop a comment, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you found this content helpful and insightful. Thanks very much. Have a good night.